In the name of God, Father, Son, and Holy Spirit, amen. Please be seated or stay seated or however that goes. Well, before we start, I do want to acknowledge the fact that it's been quite the exhausting week. Actually, more like an exhausting month. You know what? Heck, I'm just going to say it. It's been a hell of a year. And I'm going to guess that a lot of us are feeling, a bit upended, on edge, emotional, off balance, just sort of not sure what's coming next. I want to take 30 seconds, and I want to invite you to either stand or remain seated wherever you are. And if you're standing, just put your feet about shoulder width apart and just have your arms at your side. If you're seated, just keep your feet flat on the floor and just have your hands near your knees. And now you can either keep your eyes open or closed, either standing or sitting. I invite you to breathe in for about 3 to 4 seconds, and then I'm going to invite you to breathe out for about 3 to 4 seconds. And we're going to do that 5 times for about a total of 30 seconds. All right? Go ahead. Breathing in and out. Okay. Now, normally, if we were all together here in the same space, I'd ask for a show of hands. Does anyone feel a little better? Does anyone feel maybe a little more at peace? And for those of you who are raising your hands or nodding, I want to remind you that nothing in your life changed during those 30 seconds, did it? And the reason you feel a little bit better or feel more at peace is that the peace of God is not dependent on your life circumstances. Let me say that again. The peace of God is not dependent upon your life circumstances. It is available to you at all times, in any place, and to all people everywhere. The word for breath and spirit is actually the same word in both the Old Testament and the New Testament, the Hebrew and the Greek. In Hebrew, it's the word ruach, and in Greek, it's the word pneuma. So in the coming days, weeks, months, breathe in and breathe out. Breathe in and out that peace of God. All right, let's get to the sermon. Today is Stewardship Sunday. That's right, it happens every fall. You know it's coming. This is the Sunday when we ask you for money. And that's important. Truly, it's important because we got to keep the lights on. We've got to pay people. We have to buy donuts. But I'm also very keenly aware that today is also the Sunday at the end of a very long week for most of us. And I could start talking about tithing and giving to the church and filling out a pledge card. And if you want to have that conversation, either myself, Father Ralph, Deacon Lisa, any of our vestry members, we will be more than happy to have a transparent conversation with you about St. Thomas's finances. But is that all that today is about? Could there be something larger, something deeper, or some other thing that's going on? So if you are able, I want to invite you to take a look at the front cover of the bulletin that we emailed out. And you can also find the bulletin linked at the top of our website using this link down here on the live stream page. Now, don't worry if you can't find it. You don't need to scramble because, as you've already probably seen, I've got a large print of it right down front, and Deacon Lisa is going to move the camera right down front so you can look at it. And we're going to bounce back and forth between it. This, what you're looking at, hopefully, is what's called an icon. And it is perhaps one of the most famous icons ever written. And that's an important distinction because icons are not drawn, they are not painted, icons are written. And this icon was written by Andrei Rublev, and it is simply called the Trinity. All right, you can bring the camera back up to me for just a moment. Deacon Lisa's rocking this, by the way. All right, now, Rublev wrote this particular icon as a depiction of a scene that we read about in Genesis chapter 18. 3 visitors show up to the tent of Abraham. And upon their arrival, Abraham, he gets up and he quickly runs in, gets some food and some drink, and he brings it out to them. They eat their fill, and they go on their way. And it becomes clear as this scene sort of progressive, and it becomes clear to both Abraham and his wife Sarah that these visitors were in fact God. There were 3 visitors, and yet there was one triune God in their midst. So Rublev reads this passage and he's like, oh my gosh, I'm gonna paint myself a picture because it's just so beautiful. Even though he was Russian, he apparently had a southern accent. But what's important for us to remember is that this icon, Rublev is not trying to depict historic reality. Like, this isn't a screenshot from the video that was going at this time. Rublev is instead communicating theological truth. So we're going to take a look at the icon again, and we're going to see what we can see. You want to drop back down there, Deacon Lisa? All right, first, you might notice all 3 figures have the same face. Why? Well, they're all God. 3 persons and yet one God. On the left, you have the Father, or the Creator. In the middle, then you have the Son, or the Redeemer. And then the Spirit, the Sustainer, is over on the right. And I want you to also notice, all 3 of them, as part of their garment, have a little bit of the same color, like sort of linking the 3 of them. And that's the color blue. Because in most icons and religious artwork, blue is the color of divinity. But they've also got some other colors going on, don't they? Like the Father sort of has this gold overlay. This signifies kingship. The Son has this kind of brownish, reddish shawl on, and these colors actually signify earth and blood, because you have to remember the Genesis 2 account of creation tells of humans being like created out of the earth, out of the clay. And the blood is obviously reference to Christ's sacrifice. And you sort of see how the Son in the middle there is sort of holding up 2 fingers. This sort of shows how Jesus was all, yeah, man, peace and love. That's not actually true. It's actually a reference to the 2 natures of Christ, both human and divine. And then finally, the Spirit sort of has this green thing going on. And this refers to how the Spirit was present at creation, bringing life and growth. Theologians over the centuries have used this green color and talked about this green color to saying that God is doing something in the midst of this creation, creating something new even today. Now, if you look a little more closely, the Spirit and the Son are looking at the Father. They're honoring the Creator. Each of them is sort of holding a staff, which sort of symbolizes the authority that they have. But enough about what they're wearing and the colors and all that stuff. Where are they? Like, what are they doing? Well, it looks like they're sitting at a table. And sort of in the middle, there's a bowl. So it's like they're sharing a meal together. They are eating together. And this is critical. So please don't miss this. And you can bring the camera back up to me. The fact that they are eating together means that they are in relationship together with one another. Because that's what we do. We get together, we hang out, and we eat together. At the core of who God is community. Now, the implications of this are far-reaching, but the most important thing I want you to hear is this. The Trinity is not a doctrine for you to believe in. Like, if there's a checklist of things you need to make sure you're believing or not believing, the Trinity is not on that list. The Trinity is a relationship for you to enter into. Let me say that again. The Trinity is not a doctrine for you to believe in. The Trinity is a relationship for you to enter into. And what do we know about relationships? Well, I don't know about your relationships, but a lot of my relationships, they have this, there's like a flow going on. Do you know what I'm talking about? Like, you have friends, and sometimes your relationship with those certain friends, sometimes it's in a good place, sometimes not so much. Like, perhaps with all that's going on in our country right now, you know exactly what I'm talking about. There's a rhythm to those relationships. Sometimes you're moving well with that person. It's almost like you're dancing and like you're grooving and things are going okay. Sometimes you're just all out of step and you're falling all over each other because one or more of you is dancing to a different rhythm, and that flow of your relationship it's disrupted. It's the same with the Trinity. You are invited into that flow, into this rhythm. You're invited to dance. And we see this in our Old Testament reading today. Joshua has taken over for Moses because they're like preparing to enter this new way of living with God. And because, if you remember, they were in slavery, like in Egypt, where their only value was how many bricks can you make? Like they had been dehumanized by other humans for centuries. But now God has called them out of that and invited them into this flow of what it means to be in relationship with God and with others. If you look at that text from Joshua, you can see the people are being asked to step into a new way to live, a new way to be human. The people of God shouldn't have hate in their hearts. They certainly don't seek revenge. Like when we favor one group over another, we're disrupting that flow. When we seek revenge, we're not in rhythm with God. Like loving your neighbor as yourself, that's the dance. It's giving versus holding on to. It's being generous versus being stingy. It's forgiveness versus revenge. It's caring for others versus only caring for yourself. We already intuitively know this. Like, how many of you have felt that amazing just feeling when you've taken the opportunity to serve others? Like, you feel that way because you are tapping into that divine flow. You're entering the dance. Just 2 weeks ago, I preached on Jesus being asked, what's the greatest commandment? And his response was, loving God and loving your neighbor is central to what it means to live with God in this world and be a part of what God is doing in the world. Loving God means giving love to your neighbor. Giving love to your neighbor means you are loving God. At the center of this whole God, Jesus, Bible Church thing is this truth. God gives the Son to us. The Son gives his life for us. And then the Spirit gives life and truth and peace to all of us. Like woven into this Trinitarian God is a spirit of giving and generosity. Now you might be saying, that's great, Aran, great stuff. What does that mean for us here and right now? Well, let's look back at the icon, shall we? You see the three figures there around the table, but look closely. How many sides does that table have? The answer is 4. That's a 4-sided table. Well, who's that fourth spot for? It's for you. It's for me. It's for us. The purpose of this icon is for us to meditate on the fact that we are invited to pull up a seat and join that party. I mean, and why wouldn't you? Why wouldn't I? Maybe that's a question we need to ask. And you can put the camera back up on me. Are there things that are keeping you from pulling up to the table? Is there stuff that's going on with you in the world that makes it difficult to step into the divine flow of the Trinity? Like in the midst of all the emotions that have gone on this week, are you struggling with things that make it hard to see and participate in the truth that at the heart of this Trinity, of this Trinitarian God, is this spirit of giving? Maybe there's some resentment, cynicism, bitterness, like those things that just rob you of joy. Here is my invitation to you. In just a moment, we're going to take another 30 seconds and breathe like we did before. But while you do so, the camera's going to go back, not now, the camera's going to go back to the icon in just a minute. And as you meditate on this icon and as you breathe, I invite you to confess in your heart anything that you know is keeping you from participating in that divine flow of the Trinity. And because, yes, it is Stewardship Sunday, I do want to remind you that one of the ways that you can sort of pull up a chair to that table and step into this divine flow and rhythm, you can give to the church. You can fill out that pledge card that was mailed to you. That is a way of joining the dance. This is something you can do as an individual, with your spouse or significant other. I'd even encourage you to get together with your entire family and talk about how you want to do this. If St. Thomas isn't your regular place of worship, it's totally fine. Like, you can find the Give page on our website and you can make a donation there if you like. Or if you would like a pledge card, you can contact us through our website and we will get you one. Father Ralph, Deacon Lisa, your vestry, and I, we want to make sure that you understand that there is no requirement to fill out a pledge card. Like, there are lots of ways to give and to step into what God is doing in the world. But now, my friends, as the camera focuses back on the icon, I invite you to breathe and meditate on what it looks like to pull up a seat to this table. Confess anything that's keeping you from doing so. Give yourself to a new way of life and join the divine flow of the Trinity. So let's breathe and meditate and pray. Go ahead. We're good. I think we'll chat. And Lisa and Bishop Matt, your mic is on now, sir. Good.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you. Had to adjust the camera there, so. All right. Someone just mentioned, by the way, both Joshua and the Psalm pay tribute to the importance of history and of remembering what has gone before. Just saw that comment there. Mm-hmm. So, wonderful.
As a former history teacher, I love that comment.
That's right. I always forget you were a history teacher. I always think you were English, but
Whoa,
no.
I did both.
You did? Okay, well, there you go. Yeah, so I knew part of your history. I'd just forgotten about the other. So, yeah, wonderful. All right. Someone made a comment that they liked my southern Russian accent, which that's not a thing, by the way. So,
yeah, I don't think so.
All right. Well, I've said enough. In our discussion that we normally do. If you do have a comment, please drop it into the comments and we can address it.
I love the icon. That's what I think my hands down most favorite. But the thing that struck me differently today was how small the table is. Like, when I think of like historical painting tables, I think of the Last Supper with this huge table and everyone's all strung out, and you don't have the Trinity on this huge table where they're all spread out. They're intimately grouped together. Yeah. And there's gonna be barely enough room for you to squeeze up for that fourth side. But I think that's so wonderful because I think it shows the intimacy that we are invited to share with God. Like, I picture walking up to that table saying, I'm not sure if I belong at this table, and being drawn in. And I just, like, as I say that, I just get chills of, we are so lucky to have this relationship with God. Mm-hmm. So
there is that drawing in, that invitation that I think the icon so beautifully represents. Mm-hmm. And it is, as I said, it's a theological truth, which I think one of the things that he's trying to get after. It's like, you're invited to this thing and be a part of it. So, yeah.
Yeah, I was thinking, why might we not take the invitation, accept the invitation? And you mentioned several things that get in the way, our own resentments and bitterness and our own lack of forgiveness, our own inhospitality. I mean, there's a whole host of things. But I also wonder if, unless, well, I mean, it's probably symbiotic, but at least a big piece of it is, do I believe that this is true, such that I believe that the welcome is real and sincere? And do I believe that if I accept the invitation to this party, it's going to be a party that I'm going to actually enjoy being at and be really, truly welcome at?
Yeah.
And I think for a lot of folk, that's the block. I don't believe it, I don't want to contradict your sermon necessarily.
I'm okay with pushback. Yeah.
Unless I believe the doctrine that God is this three-way welcome, am I really willing? Because there's an awful lot of other ways to believe about God, right? That
Sure.
God's just this big, bad, angry meanie, and I need to get my act together before I can come to the table. But what the doctrine of the Trinity, what the teaching, or the theology that he's teaching, the truth of the theology, as you just put it, then maybe I say, okay, well, if Jesus came out of the heart of the Trinity and loved even washed Judas's feet, maybe I'm welcome too.
And which brings up for me, is belief a precursor for participation, or can participation lead me deeper into
I think
belief?
that's the symbiosis, right?
Right?
Like,
It's this.
I'll take a step and then I believe more because it's just true of every relationship, right? How well do I know Lisa? Well, I know her this much, but if I start to actually be in a relationship with her, I know her even more.
Yes. Yes.
And my trust in her grows, and as my trust grows, my relationship. So I think there is this kind of, it's not either or,
Building.
it's both.
Right. It's as
But
we
one
go.
without the
so
other
that-
will be incomplete, because I can't really be in a relationship with Lisa if I don't know her,
Right.
or if I have all kinds of false ideas about Lisa.
Yep. And one of the ways that you can get to know Lisa better, since we're using you as the example,
Yeah, this is great.
is to hang out.
That's what deacons are for.
Right, is to hang out with the people that she knows.
Yeah.
And get to know her. That was like,
Right.
tell me about this Lisa lady. You
Yeah.
know, and what's her story and stuff. Someone just put a question in there like, are all the figures in the icon neither male nor female? And when I first saw this, I was like, why are they all women? Like, that was my first, like, they just had a feminine look to it. And then I learned more about what it was, and how it was basically it's not trying to communicate anything along the lines of gender. It's just trying to simply create this invitation to a relationship.
But it is interesting, though, that none of them have the big white flowing beard
Right.
that a lot of paintings have of the
Right.
one God. This is a pet peeve of mine. Every time you see a cartoon or a comic that has God, you've got this old white guy with a big beard on a cloud, which is wrong in so many levels, partly because it's not Trinitarian.
Right.
It's Unitarian, and it's just this old white guy.
Yep.
And this icon is actually quite remarkable in that it is not real clear. There's a mystery, even in the depiction of the Trinity.
Yep. Yeah. So I think that invitation into it is a way, and again, no matter what church you're a part of, participate in the life of your church or in the life of your community. We talked about filling out pledge cards. Fill out a pledge card for your own church. You don't have to do one for St. Thomas. Give to your own church. Give to your own faith community and stuff. Because there's, as you said, there's lots of ways to sort of step into this.
There is a verse in 2 Peter that the Orthodox Church has really run with in a way that at least the Presbyterian church I grew up in didn't talk too much about, but there's this kind of promise that we will be partakers in divinity, which sounds very much like what Rublev is depicting here, to be caught up in divinity in such a way that we even take on some of that in a way that's beyond our imagining, but to take on the love and joy and peace that is the dance of the Trinity is a pretty wonderful prospect.
Indeed.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Excellent. Thanks.
Amen.